Welcome to the Debrief. In this third of our series on North Carolina's role in the American Revolution, we learn more about how North Carolina really shaped the U.S. Constitution. In this episode, our own Donald Bryson sits down with North Carolina Supreme Court Chief Justice Paul Newby to talk more about the Hillsborough Convention and the fight over federal power and how North Carolina's resistance brought us the Bill of Rights.
Welcome back to Revolutionary Roads, a podcast of the North Carolina History Project at the John Locke Foundation. We are in episode 10, which is the final episode, where we're going to talk about the ratification by North Carolina of the United States Constitution. We've taken a long road through North Carolina's role in the founding of America, not just the Revolution, but after. Once we revolt, we have to actually go about the business of governing. And it's been a very interesting path with a lot of interesting guests on this podcast. And if you've enjoyed this content, please click like and share, subscribe, and share this content with your friends, because it's an important time to talk about the founding principles of our state and of our nation. In our last episode, that would have been episode 9, we talked with Dr. Andrew Taylor from North Carolina State University about North Carolina under the Articles of Confederation. We had talked about the Battle of Guilford Courthouse, which precipitated over several months and led to the end of the armed conflict of the Revolution, with Cornwallis surrendering at Yorktown, Virginia in October of 1781. The Treaty of Paris was signed in 1783, and that was the end of the actual armed conflict. But then we had to govern, and North Carolina was one of the 13 states under the Articles of Confederation, but it was still called the United States of America. But then very quickly, people realized that there were weaknesses within the Articles of Confederation. It was a national government that was called to national defense, but couldn't really fund the national defense. It couldn't really do much about trade or commerce or anything like that. In fact, several of the states could come up with their own currency, and this led to an economic depression and had all sorts of problems. And so 5 states came together in Annapolis, Maryland in 1786 to discuss maybe there need to be changes to the Articles of Confederation. And then very quickly that led to a much broader conversation with a follow-up convention in Philadelphia in 1788. North Carolina represented at both of those, but I'll turn it over to our guest now. I'm very happy to have, he's a friend of the John Locke Foundation. This is Chief Justice Paul Newby. He is Chief Justice of the North Carolina State Supreme Court and an expert on the North Carolina Constitution, and hopefully an expert on the U.S. Constitution as well.
They kind of go hand in hand.
They do go hand in hand, but thank you for joining us today, Chief Justice. Where are we in this history? We're at Annapolis. We see weaknesses with the Articles of Confederation. What's this conversation like as we go in Annapolis and then on to Philadelphia?
So it's great to try to put ourselves back into what it would have been like to have been a North Carolinian during this period of time. All right. And the real question that we're going to talk about today is, does union equal more freedom or less freedom?
Right.
More freedom or less freedom? So the Articles of Confederation, just as just a loosely grouping, and we didn't show up in Maryland. Okay, we had other stuff going on. Let me give a little bit of the backstory, if I could. I love maps. Okay,
fair enough.
For millennials, maps actually are pictorial. It's like, pull out your phone. Okay, you might see something, you might not, but it goes all the way North Carolina. So this is what would be called the eastern half of North Carolina, okay? Because we go all the way to the Mississippi River.
Right.
Okay. We have Spanish/French. We have English. We have Native Americans, specifically the Cherokee. And we have people looking for free or very inexpensive land.
Right.
The big debate in North Carolina at this time is, what do we do with Tennessee? Or what's now Tennessee. At the time, it was actually, we had the state of Franklin that lasted for just a little while.
Right.
And are we going to give this to the federal government? If we do we get any credit toward all of our war debt?
Right.
Why don't we just keep it and sell it so we can earn, or we can raise money to pay off our war debt? And how do we even govern this area from here to the Mississippi?
Yeah.
Well, we allowed them to elect some delegates to our General Assembly, so they were somewhat represented. But as this map indicates, civilization basically ended right here during the Revolutionary War. Now, after the war, you had just a very quick population of these areas by folks heading west for the reasons I've mentioned. So North Carolina was very concerned about its internal government. Power and money is in the East.
Yep.
And
absolutely.
What were their incentives? They wanted stability. They already had access to commerce. They didn't want to be tariffed. They like stability.
I feel like we're having some of these debates today.
It does seem like
it does.
It goes around. So again, if you stop here, basically in Salisbury, the area in the early 1700s, North Carolina was here. Very quickly, all this area began to develop.
Right.
With whom? Not the landed, not the aristocracy. These are subsistence farmers.
Right.
These are the heart, as you've already had in a podcast, these are the heart of the regulation movement.
Right.
Government, we don't need you. Stay out of our way. Don't tax us overly, and give us justice in the courts when we're being ripped off by people. Okay, so you've got this internal government and the tension that's going on there. So, like I said, we didn't send anybody up to Baltimore for that convention.
Right.
So, the Federalists, again, they're the better educated. They are the ones who are in power. So the governor at the time Governor Caswell decided to wait till the last day of the General Assembly session that year. And on that day, he said, hey, I just got this notice from Virginia. They're having this meeting up there in Philadelphia. Let's send delegates. And here's my slate. And they put 5 Federalists on it and Wiley Jones.
And Wiley Jones. Spelled, for anybody who's going to look that up, it's spelled like Willie, Willie, but it is pronounced Wiley.
Right. And Mr. Jones said, thanks, but no thanks. I'm not going to something like this. It just smells. I'm very concerned about this. So he is the leader of the subsistence farmers, even though he's an aristocrat.
Very much an aristocrat.
But somehow his idea of democracy had to do with grassroots.
Okay.
And so he basically was very, very concerned about power, absolute power corrupting. He didn't want anything to do with giving some central government more power. And he thought the best way to handle it, I'm just going to stay home. Well, was that a wise choice? So anyway, that's what was going on here during that period of time.
Right. Let me ask you, Mr. Chief Justice, how did you become interested in the law? As we're discussing the Constitution's the ratification, what got you going on that as a young man?
I tell young people, if you want to know if you're called to go to law school, I've got 2 questions for you.
Okay.
One is, when there's a dispute about the rules in your Monopoly game, who looks it up and reads it? Okay, that's a sure sign you may be headed to law school.
Okay.
And the other one is, when you see one of your classmates or somebody younger than you being picked on, what do you do? Do you walk away? Do you ignore it? Do you say, this isn't right, I'm going to step out there and do something about it?
Sure.
That's another sign you're going to want to go to law school.
All right.
So I had those experiences when I was young. Mom wanted me to go to both med and law school, and I was like, Mom, I can't do them both. So anyway, that took me there.
Well, that's interesting. That's a good personal perspective. You mentioned Wiley Jones, and the other 4 that were sent from North Carolina to Philadelphia were William Blount, Hugh Williamson, and Richard Dobbs Speight. I think we get a lot in history about the need for the Constitution, and we talk a lot about the Federalist Papers, and we'll probably talk about those here in a little bit. But if you're a Wiley Jones and a member of this larger movement of anti-federalists, and they are concerned about the power of a centralized government after they have just overthrown a centralized government, a powerful centralized government. What are these objections that they have to making a stronger government post Articles of Confederation? What are their arguments?
The government that governs least governs best.
Mm-hmm.
We have fought, we have died for our freedom. Why in the world would we want to enslave ourselves again to a powerful central government when we have fought so hard to have this freedom? And again, while we may want government to help us with some infrastructure because we're subsistence farmers, if we have a surplus, we want to be able to get it to market.
Mm-hmm.
But generally speaking, just leave us alone.
Yeah.
Let us do what we can do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we want the government over there and not over here.
That's right. That's right. And again, look how far away government is. The seats of government are where these yellow stickers are, and maybe Hillsborough.
Maybe, yeah.
And the people we're talking about are here west.
Right.
So it's like the further away we are from government, the better.
Mm-hmm. No, well, yeah, it sort of feels that way now, even though we're here in Raleigh right now, and of course. A lot of history will be talked about over the next few years as we get through the 250th anniversary of the founding of the country, and they'll talk about Philadelphia, and the Philadelphia Convention passed most of what is now the U.S. Constitution. Obviously, 27 amendments have been made since then, and we'll talk about that because that's an important part of this story. They did that in September of 1787, and then the Federalist Papers happened. And that's a series of 85 essays written by some really remarkable men, mostly in New York newspapers, between October of 1787 to May of 1788. Can you talk to us a little bit about the Federalist Papers and the fact that they wrote 85 of these in such a short period of time?
Well, the underlying knowledge base on these founders was just remarkable.
Mm-hmm.
But what are they trying to do? They're trying to talk to a folk that have just gotten rid of the bounds of royal oversight, royal control, and they're saying, we need to have a strong central government. Mm-hmm. We need to have an independently elected executive. Right. We need to have a Congress for 2-year terms. And oh, by the way, in that Congress, we're going to have senators that have 6-year terms. Mm-hmm. And we're going to have a constitutionally established judiciary. Mm-hmm. And we're going to let them serve for life. Mm-hmm. As they encountered the grassroots folks across our nation, how do you tell folks that this will not enslave you or bring you subject to some type of tyranny again?
Right.
So they began, I'm sure, to flood the Federalist newspapers by those that were leaning toward this type of government to make their compelling case. Because if it were just left without this, there's a good chance folks are going to vote it down. So they were doing that to try to convince people that, yes, we are establishing a strong executive. Let me tell you, particularly in North Carolina,
sure,
why that was a challenge. We had Tryon's Palace. Well, let's tax the little guy. How are we going to pay for it? Let's tax the little guy. We had folks in Charlotte who were Presbyterians, staunch Presbyterians. We had the British having enforced the idea of a church that was supported by the state, and the only people that could marry people, the only were the Church of England priests. So you had all these issues that were forced on our people, and we were able to get ourselves away from that.
Yeah.
What was going to stop this new federal government from that? In North Carolina, we said, we're going to have 1-year terms, not 2-year terms, 1-year terms by the General Assembly. The General Assembly would elect the governor who could serve 1 year at a time, only 3 years out of 6, and then he was done. We had the General Assembly appointing judges to serve at their pleasure. So although we said there are going to be three separate branches and they're going to be separate, well, separate in what sense? Because the General Assembly appointed everybody. Why?
Right.
We trust you for 1 year. And if you don't do what we want, what the people said, then we're going to replace you.
Right.
So it was very much a hands-on, almost daily democracy.
Yeah.
Or much more a democracy than even a representative republic.
That's very intensive government in North Carolina. Of course, the authors of the Federalist Papers are Alexander Hamilton and James Madison, who become great rivals later on, not long after this, and then John Jay. And I've always thought that it was interesting that you essentially have the future of three branches of government represented in those three, with Hamilton serving very much in the executive, James Madison going on to be Speaker of the U.S. House, and then John Jay on the Supreme Court, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's very interesting. I've always wondered how the conversations between Hamilton and Madison played out that early on, since they became, I would say, embittered later on. But they got past it, and they were obviously very convincing, because we still talk about them today. Kids learned about them in school. But then in North Carolina, this takes us to a constitutional convention to ratify the United States Constitution that was written in Philadelphia for North Carolina. And this was in Hillsborough from July 21st of 1788 to August 2nd of 1788. And it doesn't go the same way that it does in some northern states like Delaware and Connecticut, who very quickly ratified the U.S. Constitution. What happens in Hillsborough?
What happened in Hillsborough was predetermined by the election that led to Hillsborough.
Okay.
There was, for the first time in North Carolina, you had a clear, almost partisan divide, okay, of the Federalist and the anti-federalists. And you had the Federalists who actually, even though he wasn't a delegate, were led by James Iredell, who would be Washington's last appointment to the U.S. Supreme Court.
Right.
But also William R. Davie. UNC fans thank him for the University of North Carolina. They were very much in the forefront of propounding the federal Constitution. But on the other hand, you had the grassroots. The grassroots did not trust government. They truly believed what Jefferson said in the Declaration, that government exists to protect fundamental rights and freedoms. And they knew the more power you give a government, the less freedoms you have. Power of government increases, freedom, liberties decrease.
Right.
That's always happens. So there were a lot of grassroots activity led by Wiley Jones, also Mr. Bloodworth and Person, Caldwell. These were well-known anti-federalists that had not supported us going to Philadelphia to begin with. And they were able to rally their voters. And keep in mind, too, it's a little bit of an uphill battle, because to vote in North Carolina under the 1776 Constitution, depending on what you were voting for, there were different degrees of property ownership that you had to have. There were no race distinctions or ethnicity distinctions. Everybody who was a taxpayer could vote for the House of Commons. Everybody who had a certain amount of property could vote for a Senate seat.
Okay.
So it's not like you're taking, like we would have almost universal suffrage, 21 years old, but you basically had to be a taxpayer. And most of these subsistence farmers probably owned some tax or owned enough property that they had to pay taxes.
Right.
So they probably got to vote. Anyway, the vote ends up to be 184 anti-federalists, 83 federalists. Okay. The very first day, I love Wiley Jones, the very first day of the convention, he stands up and says, "Hey, look, everybody here knows how everybody's going to vote. Let's just go ahead and vote. Let's don't waste the taxpayers' dollars by us hanging around in Hillsborough. Let's just vote." And he got defeated on that. They graciously allowed the convention to go on for 11 days. 11 days later, guess what the vote was? 184 to 83. Everybody knew why they had been elected.
Yeah.
They knew. But it was brilliant on the Federalists to do what they did. Why? Because they had somebody recording every argument that they made. So the anti-federalists, they're silent. They know they're going to win this. You know, it's like, okay, let's go ahead and get this over with so we can get back home.
Yeah.
And the Federalists kind of drone on and on.
Yeah.
And when they're doing that, they're creating news stories. And for the next year, they are filling all the newspapers in the state with, this is why we need a federal government. So it was a brilliant strategy on their part. But again, North Carolina, and I love this about it, we did not ratify the Constitution at that point because there was no protection of fundamental rights and freedoms. As you've indicated, Madison and Hamilton, in particular, argued we don't need any protection like that because this is a limited grant of power. Let me back up just a second.
Sure.
Two types of constitutions that we have in America. Okay, one is our state constitution, which limits the power of us. It limits the power of we the people. Okay. Basically, the government can do what they deem best, or the General Assembly can do what it deems best, unless it's expressly prohibited by the state constitution, which is why we as a court have a beyond a reasonable doubt standard to find something unconstitutional. Right. Presumption that the General Assembly is acting on behalf of the people, and the presumption of constitutionality. So when we look at the second constitution is the federal constitution, which is, in theory, a limited grant of power. I was an assistant U.S. attorney for a while, and every time I went into federal court, the question is, why doesn't this case need to be in state court where there is general jurisdiction as opposed to a federal court where there's limited jurisdiction?
Interesting.
And so the federal constitution is, in theory, a limited grant of power. And Hamilton said, we don't need a Bill of Rights because the federal government will never be strong enough to intrude on your fundamental rights and freedoms.
I don't think a lot of people understand that North Carolina was, in fact, a hotbed of anti-federalism. We weren't the only state with anti-federalists, but we definitely were a leading state of anti-federalists. But do you think that shaped the state's politics over the years going forward?
I think you can find those threads in today's politics. Absolutely, it did. But I do believe that North Carolina, through the Mecklenburg Declaration of Independence, the Halifax Resolves, we are a freedom-loving people, and we are naturally distrusting of big government.
Yeah.
And so I think that those things were evident then, they're evident today. But we're also pragmatists. And hey, everybody else has joined. They seem to be prospering. Maybe it's not so bad for us to join as well.
Yeah. I think between the Hillsborough Convention and the Fayetteville Convention, the Hillsborough Convention is clearly the more dramatic of the two. And I'm going to put you on the spot, Justice Newby. If you're a delegate at the Hillsborough Convention, where do you come down? Do you think North Carolina is right to hold out on this Constitution?
Well, I think you lose your negotiating position if you don't.
Okay.
And I do think that there's a lot to be said for the protection of fundamental rights and freedoms. So I hope that I would be as much of a person of principle as our forefathers were to say, even if there are some negative repercussions, we are not going to join just because everybody else so far has. We are going to hold out for protection from a centralized government that appears to have power.
Do you think that North Carolina holding out, and I'm talking just about North Carolina, do you think that was really a big push? Do you think that pressured the broader Federalist movement nationally to do the Bill of Rights, or was the Bill of Rights going to happen without North Carolina?
I don't think that the Bill of Rights would have happened when it did.
Okay.
Would it have eventually happened? I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, Madison and Hamilton were very dogmatic in that the federal government will never have enough power to. Maybe after some of the early decisions of the U.S. Supreme Court, maybe that would have impacted, well, we need to be pretty clear about where the lines between state and federal government happened to be. So I think it ultimately would have happened, but not at the time it did.
So it definitely expedited.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Well, I think that's a great heritage to be proud of if you're in North Carolina. Absolutely.
Yeah, as a school kid, it just really bothered me that we were 12th. I mean, we're not even in the top 5. We're not in the top 10, and I never had anybody really explain it to me. But once I dug in and I realized, hey, it's not that we're slow in North Carolina, we're principled.
Yeah.
And this was a principled stand that we made.
Well, 236 years on from, of course, we're talking about the 250th anniversary of the founding of the nation, but we're 236 years on from the Fayetteville Convention and the ratification of the U.S. Constitution. What do you think the heritage is of that it took that long, and North Carolina's role in the ratification?
I think North Carolina's role in the ratification, and frankly, in the history of our country, history is always complicated. There are always various aspects, and it depends on, are you at the granular level or are you at the 30,000-foot level? I do think that this early contribution of North Carolina, which is to say, we are not just going to join the rest because they're there. We are going to independently assess and do what we think is best to protect our fundamental rights and freedoms. I think that's a beautiful thing. And in our 1776 Constitution, one of my favorite quotes, which we still have today, one of the favorite articles, says, a frequent recurrence to fundamental principles is absolutely necessary to preserve the blessings of liberty. That's what these podcasts that you're doing, that's exactly what they're doing. That's what I hope the 250th anniversary will be, a renewed sense of reflecting on just how miraculous it is that we have maintained freedom and liberty as a nation for as long as we have. But to realize, as President Reagan famously said, is we're always one generation away from losing it.
Yeah.
And we had better reflect, appreciate, and hang on to.
I think that is the perfect place to wind up this series. I couldn't have said that any better. Mr. Chief Justice, thank you so much for joining us on this 10th and final episode of Revolutionary Roads. If you liked it, if you agree with what he just said, I think that was very well put. Please like, subscribe, share this podcast series with your friends. We thank you for going on this journey of North Carolina's history and America's founding with us. And if you haven't listened to the other episodes, you should go back and listen. We think it's a great story, and we'll see you next time.